It is Thursday, the 4th of February, 2021, and you're listening to Skeptics with a K, the podcast for science, reason, and critical thinking. Skeptics with a K is a production of the Merseyside Skeptics Society, a non-profit organisation for the promotion of scientific skepticism on Merseyside around the UK and internationally. I am your host, Mike Hall. With me today is Marsh.
Hello.
And Alice.
Hello.
I've just had a thought as you read the date there.
Yes.
So it's Thursday the 4th.
4th of February.
Which means Friday is the 5th and Saturday is the 6th. And Saturday the 6th of February was the date we did the second 1023 campaign, I think, wasn't it?
It was 6:02.
On a Saturday.
It was the reason, actually, that QED, the first QED, was on the date it was on, was because we wanted the Sunday to land on 6:02 for the 1023 joke.
So that is what the 10th, so 10 years ago on Saturday was the first QED and the second 1023 campaign, the one we did internationally, right down to Saturday the 6th of February.
Yeah, awesome. That's good. That was a long time ago, wasn't it?
It was a long time ago.
And it's funny with the 1023 campaign as well, because there were people at the time who argued that it was just us doing a silly publicity stunt. And we're like, yeah, it was. Mm-hmm. We were under no illusions about that one. But it's kind of continued to rumble on from that point onwards. Eventually, you took what we'd been doing with 1023, took that to Good Thinking Society, went more on the NHS regulatory route with it. But it all started from 1023. It all started from that place. And it fucking got somewhere. It's taken 10 years, but it fucking got somewhere, which is amazing.
Yeah, weird old decade, really.
Persistent, perseverance, and other P words. Wasn't that the theme tune to Record Breakers? No, Dedication.
Dedication.
That was the theme tune to Record Breakers.
What I like is we've gone from talking about the first QED and the first and second 1023, which were all pre-Alice, so Alice can't really jump in too much on those. And then your segue out of that is the 1980s TV show Record Breakers, which was also pre-Alice.
I mean, if you want to be the best and you want to beat the rest, then, Dedication's what you need.
That is very true.
And he was in Doctor Who.
Roy Castle.
Yeah, Roy Castle was
he
a
companion?
He was a companion.
I'm not sure dedication is always enough.
No, I mean, talent is also what you need. And occasionally, natural ability.
Look, a little bit of luck
dedication
sometimes.
Is necessary but not sufficient was probably the original lyrics.
I think if you're naturally talented enough, you don't need, you could probably get there without dedication, especially because this is Record Breakers. So this was like Guinness Book of Records type stuff.
Oh, you say that as somebody who coasted throughout their entire life.
I work hard sometimes, but
these days,
this is Record Breakers. So this was like Guinness World Records, Guinness Book of Records type TV. So there's a lot of stuff in records that you don't need dedication. You just need to have been born with an extra thumb or something. There's a lot of them that are like, oh yeah, this person can fit so many pennies in his mouth because he was born with slightly weirdly stretchy cheeks. Yeah. You don't need that much dedication to do that.
I remember when I was at school, I don't know what the school grading system is like now, because obviously I was at school 1,000 years ago. But when I was at school, we used to get 2 marks. We used to get a mark for attainment and a mark for effort. So the attainment would be like A, B, C, D, yada, 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 where A is the best, or A star would be the best. But then you would get a mark for effort, where it was 1 was you worked really hard, and 5 was you not conscientious, I think was the way that it shook out.
I am glad that they didn't do those sorts of grades when I was in school.
I used to argue while I was at school that the best mark that you could get in a class would be A5.
Yeah, I was about to say exactly the same thing. Yeah.
You put in no effort whatsoever and still get straight A's. That's the best. And people go, well, no, A1 is the best. You go, no.
You tried really hard.
A load of effort in for A1.
Well, either that or A should automatically be a 1, because you can't have done A5 because the only real purpose of what you're doing is to get an A. And if you achieve that, you put in the requisite amount of effort. Any effort you put in beyond that is superfluous. So
excessive effort.
So A should have the floor for effort for an A should just be 1.
A0, too conscientious. What is, pack it in. So I've just got one question for the two of you. What is app? What actually is it? What is app? What is app?
What is app?
What is app?
.exe.
It's a daft name, really, isn't it? When you think about it, a conflation of what's up, the popular casual greeting, and app, a relatively technical term for a software application.
For a moment there, Mike, I thought you were only thinking the name was stupid because you thought the name is What Is App, and that you'd missed the what's up pun on it.
No.
There was a moment where I was like, hold on a second. Has he just missed it for like this entire time?
Oh, shit. That makes more sense now, actually, doesn't it? So, yeah, it's a software application for casual communication, I suppose. Actually, maybe it's not that. It definitely was. It's not up there with other pun-based businesses, like a chip shop called Frying Nemo. You know, it's not as good as that, or an arcade called Slots of Fun or something like that. Curl Up and Die is the hairdresser, is the
textbook.
It's not up there with that. It's not at that caliber
of punning.
Of pun.
It's not bad though.
But it's not bad. It's all right. It definitely came first. It was, we call it WhatsApp first, and then think of something for it to be.
No, there's no way that's how that went. It's not like they came up with the name WhatsApp and thought, right, what is the application that we use for that WhatsApp is?
As it turns out, that's literally what happened.
What?
Is they said, we want to make an app. We think mobiles are going to be big. We want to make an app. We're going to call it WhatsApp. And they hadn't decided what it was going to be yet.
That is ridiculous.
Fuck me.
That's not how you build apps, I don't think. I've never built an app.
Probably more common than you think.
It's definitely not how you build a business. You don't come up with a name for your business first. And then, have we got the skills to do the thing that we want to do with this business?
It's hard to impress upon people from outside of Europe what a big deal WhatsApp is within Europe, really. Over in the US, it's something of an also-ran in terms of instant messaging clients. But over here, it is ubiquitous.
Yeah, that's probably not quite the right way to frame it, because I know it's even bigger in India and Brazil than it is in anywhere in Europe. It's like in Brazil, when you go to a restaurant, they ask you for your WhatsApp number and they tell you that your table's ready via WhatsApp.
Sure.
I was looking for one of my Brazilian colleagues. I was looking up the test centre for her. She was going to Brazil for Christmas and then coming home. And I was looking for the phone number for the test centre, and their COVID test centre is a WhatsApp number.
Is a WhatsApp number, yeah. Now, all I mean by that is I'm talking from the perspective of somebody in Europe about an American company where their product is not actually as big in America as it is in Europe. But you're right, it's huge in India, it's huge in Brazil, it's huge in North Africa. And in the US, it's something of a bit, I think I installed that once. It's not anywhere near as big a deal.
What do they use in America then?
The big one in America is iMessage, actually, because everyone's got a bloody iPhone. iMessage is a very, very big one over in the US. But over here, and in lots of the rest of the world, as Marsh says, everybody has WhatsApp, and there's no real rival to it. In fact, WhatsApp is the biggest instant messaging service on the planet, boasting over 2 billion users, which is just over a quarter of the planet has got WhatsApp. That's a lot of people.
Do you remember when we used to send SMSs?
Yeah. 50p a throw when I started SMS. They went down to 12p. I thought, a fucking bargain. Brilliant.
Yeah, A, do you remember when we used to send SMSs, but B, when they used to cost money? Because they didn't cost money for a long time before WhatsApp took over.
And if you want to message lots of people, you have to do it individually.
Oh, before group messages. And also, when you had to send, if it was a long message, and you'd have to send 5 separate text messages.
Yeah. Oddly enough, SMS having a 160-character limit, that is why Twitter had the 140-character limit, so there was enough space for your username and a colon, and then your message.
If it was a single text message.
That was where Twitter got the thing from, because originally you could text your message to Twitter, and it would post it on your Twitter timeline, which, of course, nobody does now.
No.
Nobody does that at all now, but
nobody really did then, I don't think.
That was what that was about. So there was some hell raised a few weeks ago when a notification started to pop up on people's devices saying that WhatsApp had a new privacy policy. And that privacy policy was mandatory, and the only way to avoid being bound by its terms was to delete your WhatsApp account before February 8th, 2021.
Yeah, you raised a little of that hell yourself.
I did, yeah. It got a lot of people into a tiz, myself included, because that new privacy policy included wording which permitted WhatsApp, the company, to share information that it holds about you with its parent company, which is Facebook. This information would include your phone number, your name, your contacts, their phone numbers. And just to be explicit, it does not include the content of your message. It does not include any of the conversations that you've had or pictures you've sent or anything like that, but it does include who you are, who you talk to, how often you talk to them, but not what is said.
There was a period in the early days when that message appeared that people did think it was, mistakenly thought that it was content.
Yes.
Which didn't help the tiz.
And there's been a terrific amount of misinformation, and some of that's come from me as well, which is one of the reasons I'm doing this story. I'm going to own up to what I've got wrong about this as well. But in response to this, 2 rival instant messaging platforms saw a huge uptick in installations. So Signal and Telegram both saw a massive uptick in installations, taking on millions of new customers as people did not want their information to be shared with Facebook, and so sought out an alternative way of keeping in touch with their friends.
You've got to think that a lot of those people do have and use Facebook and have all that same information on their Facebook accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, almost certainly.
I think that almost certainly is the case in many cases, yes.
Also, I suspect some of that spike towards Telegram was also related to the shutdown of Parler.
So, yeah, I think Signal put on several million users, but I think Telegram put on an order of magnitude more. The irony of that, of course, is that Telegram is not encrypted by default. You can do an encrypted chat on Telegram, but you have to specifically enable a secret chat mode to do that. It's not encrypted by default in the way that Signal or WhatsApp is.
My issue with Signal is more like that it's called Signal. Like with WhatsApp, you can WhatsApp somebody. With Telegram, you can Telegram somebody. You can't really signal somebody.
Can't signal somebody.
It sounds like you're trying to sort of flag them down like they're a car.
So a lot of people sought an alternative to WhatsApp in order to try and keep in touch with their friends. And I've done that too, right? I've switched to an alternative messaging service, and I'm going to be deleting my WhatsApp account probably in the next few days before the February 8th deadline, even though that's not the deadline anymore for reasons I'll come to later. So in response to the response, WhatsApp then announced that they were delaying the change to their privacy policy until May in order to give them time to try and persuade people that this is actually no big deal and that they're panicking over nothing. People have got the wrong end of the stick, is WhatsApp's argument on this. So I'm here today to talk about 3 things. There's good news, there's bad news, and there's nuance. So the good news is that WhatsApp are correct, and the new privacy policy doesn't actually change very much about how data is shared with Facebook. The bad news is that's because WhatsApp already share this data with Facebook in most cases and have been doing that since 2016, with an asterisk, which I will cover in the nuance section. So long-term listeners will be aware that I'm no particular fan of Facebook. I deleted my Facebook account back when they started rigging elections. But more than that, I'm not a fan of the business model where you offer some product or service for free in exchange for the ability to harvest personal data about people using your product and then sell that data, usually to advertising partners. I don't think that's an ethical way to do business.
No, and speaking of that, listeners, if you are listening to this show, remember to take our user survey and tell us all of your your interests.
Of course, advertising is a long-standing and time-honored business model. Advertising per se is not necessarily a problem. ITV, for example, the first commercial television service in the UK, offers programs for free. You don't have to pay ITV any money for that to watch their ITV programs. Oddly enough, you have to pay a license fee to the BBC to do it, but that's a whole separate conversation. But you don't have to pay ITV any money to watch ITV, but you are expected to consume the advertising that they put on there. And it is the advertising revenue that ITV then uses to make more programs. In principle, that should mean that ITV makes really compelling television, which generates large audiences, which then allows them to charge a premium for ad time in those compelling television shows that they've made, and thus make more money to make more compelling television. In practice, what that means is that ITV is probably the most risk-averse terrestrial station in the UK, producing the lowest common denominator and populist programming that's actually not all that tell me the groundbreaking dramas coming out of ITV. Channel 4, sure. BBC 2, sure. Groundbreaking dramas coming out of ITV, it really doesn't happen often. It happens, but not often.
And that lowest common denominator populist stuff is even more so for Channel 5.
Indeed, yeah.
Which it is the Channel 5 business model, right to the point where I think the guy who used to run Channel 5 described it as films, football and fucking were the 3 things that Channel 5 did.
But as we've discussed before on the show, digital advertising in the internet age goes so much further than just your kind of, your bog standard ads in Coronation Street. Micro-targeting of advertising means that the adverts that I see on the web can be quite different to the ones that other people see, even people that I know and people that I'm close to, because those adverts are very specifically targeted to those who are most likely to be receptive to them. And occasionally you'll see an MP put their foot in it with this, where they'll say things like, Google, I think it's a disgrace that you're doing adverts for Thai brides on your homepage. I think this is terrible. It needs to be regulated. It's like, it's targeted advertising, mate. There's a reason you're seeing that. And I talked a little bit about this sort of stuff on episode 280, where I mentioned that Lana and I see very different adverts on YouTube, for example. I see adverts for like gadgets and video games and things like that, where Lana gets adverts for diet plans and workouts and makeup. Despite us moving in very similar circles, sharing many common interests, including video games, Lana's a bigger gamer than I am, but I'm the one who sees the video game ads. We nevertheless are subjected to very different advertising pressures. The very different pressures are being brought to bear on us both as individuals, despite that, which is not something that our culture is very used to. It used to be done in quite a coarse way. I think last time I talked about this, Marsh, you raised the idea of magazine advertising will be targeted at the rough demographic of that magazine, or I pointed out that kids' telly is going to have adverts for toys in it, but nothing like the kind of targeting that's able to be done today.
Yeah,
based on the way advertisers gather huge amounts of data of personal information about their audiences, and this is on a totally unprecedented scale, so that they can accurately target you with advertising messages. Now, whether that's to sell you a product or to sell you a service, or to influence an opinion, or to change a vote. It's all the same mechanism. It's all the same stuff. So when Facebook bought WhatsApp back in 2014, there was understandably some concern that for Facebook, this was going to be just about acquiring an additional source of data, which they can then aggregate with all the other data gathered from your Facebook profile and your Instagram, and which websites you visit, if those websites have got Facebook tracking installed, which many of them do. So whether you've got a Facebook account or not, Facebook can still see you moving across the web. They can see you going from that site to that site to that site. They can still build up a profile of who you are and what kind of thing you're interested in. They don't necessarily know your name or where you live, but they can figure out an awful lot about you just on that sort of stuff alone. And at the time, what Facebook and WhatsApp said was, actually, no, that's not what this is for. It is technically impossible for us to aggregate this data together in the way that is being described. Because of the way that WhatsApp is built, because of the way that WhatsApp is put together, we can't aggregate this data in with the rest of the stuff that we do. So there's nothing to worry about here. Please, dear regulator, please give the blessing to our acquisition, which of course is what happened. Then 2 years later, they apparently figured out how to achieve the impossible, because despite having said this is technically impossible for it to happen, in August of 2016, WhatsApp announced that it would begin sharing a, quote, limited amount, unquote, of user data, including people's phone numbers, with Facebook.
Yes, but a limited amount as opposed to an unlimited amount of data, which is the only data by definition is a limited amount.
And they gave two reasons for this. There were two reasons they gave for this. First, they said, was to try and help make better friend suggestions. If you have someone on your WhatsApp who isn't on your Facebook, then Facebook now knows that you know that person and can suggest you add them as a friend. That was reason number one.
Yeah, which is ridiculous, because if you wanted to be friends with them,
you'd have added them, yeah.
Befriend them.
Reason number two is that they wanted to be able to show you more relevant ads. So improving their micro-targeting, basically improving their advertising platform. And that was literally the reason they gave, was we want to be able to show people better advertising. Because every piece of information they have about you, who you know, which of your friends you speak to, how often you speak to them, whether you call them or not, whether you video chat with them or not, and what do they like? What are your friends like? Because the stuff that a lot of your friends like, you might like too. Every piece of information they have about you tells them more about how to try and persuade you to buy a product or change an opinion or whatever.
And that's, I think you've covered before, or maybe I saw it elsewhere. That's, if I'm right, the most likely explanation for I was talking about a thing and then I started seeing adverts for it. So are they listening to everything I'm saying on the microphone?
Yes, I think that's exactly the case. I think where people think that their phone is listening to them or their Alexa device is listening to them or something like that, it's much more likely that there was an old story, and I don't know if this is an apocryphal story or not, but there was an old story that Tesco could tell when you were pregnant by your club card receipts.
Yes, yeah. If you changed the types of cosmetics you'd buy and that type of thing.
And so they would start sending you out vouchers for nappies, and you're like, well, how do they know? How do they know that I'm doing this? And Google and Facebook can do that on a scale that Tesco wishes they could do it on. This might backfire as an idea, but I thought let's give this a bash. Could you guys go to a website for me? Just open up a browser and go to a website for me.
Any website?
The website I would like you to go to is ads settings. So ads plural, settings, all one word, .google.com.
Okay, I'm on that now.
And if you scroll down on this page, this tells you all of the assumptions that Google has made about you based on the data that they have gathered about you over the years.
Oh my God, it thinks I like blues music.
Mine says ad personalization is off because I turned that fucker off.
Hooray! Mine says that as well.
Yeah, mine's on.
But Alice, there's going to be stuff in there that obviously is wrong, the inferences that they've made that are incorrect. But how much of the information that is in there is actually correct about you?
Some of it. There's things like dance and electronic music, which I hate. There's comedy films, which I would never actively seek out. The dogs. It's got dogs on there. That's fine.
Tick.
Folk music, fine. Indie music, fine. Metal music, fine. It's got me down as not a parent, which is correct. Sports games.
Sports games?
Not really. Shooter games, definitely not. Romance films, definitely not.
Oddly enough, shooter games is something that Warren is interested in because of what he does for a living at the moment.
And to be honest, maybe I've Googled it a few times to try and understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Understand what Warren's doing.
Yeah. On balance, maybe 50% accurate, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, it's got autos and vehicles. I don't drive.
But you probably Googled motorbikes.
I probably have Googled motorbikes, and I've probably put in driving directions when I've tried to find directions to places. So,
and listeners, if you want to give that a bash, go to adssettings.google.com, which not only tells you all the assumptions that Google have made about you, but also at the top is a nice big switch to turn it off.
Yeah, I have now turned mine off.
I always love how companies like that always make the personalization of the ads sound like it's doing you a favor. So if you turn this off, you'll receive less interesting ads for you. So that's your problem, not mine.
Not interested in ads, full stop, yeah.
So back to WhatsApp. In 2016, WhatsApp started to share customer data with Facebook. And even then, this was just before the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which you remember broke towards the end of 2016, early 2017, when it was basically post-Trump, wasn't it? The Cambridge Analytica scandal.
It's been a really long 4 years, hasn't it?
It very much has.
But even before Cambridge Analytica, people weren't happy about that then. So WhatsApp offered a one-time opt-out from data sharing, giving all customers a 30-day window which they could refuse permission for their data to be shared with Facebook. If you missed that 30-day window back in 2016, tough. If you signed up as a customer after that 30-day window, tough. Again, with an asterisk, and we'll talk about that in a second. But if you signed up in 2017, you weren't given the option to opt out or not. Your data is getting shared with Facebook. So, of course, what happened then is Facebook was sued by the European Commission for telling them in 2014 that what they ended up doing was actually impossible for them to do. Just 2 years later, they were doing what they told the European Commission was impossible. And on that basis, the European Commission had given the go-ahead to the acquisition of WhatsApp. For this, Facebook were fined €100 million, which, frankly, when you've just paid $19 billion in order to get hold of the WhatsApp in the first place, an extra €100 million is the difference between it being a $19 billion acquisition and a $19.1 billion acquisition.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a blind bit of difference to you whatsoever.
Yep, completely.
National regulators, however, did manage to go a little bit further. So German regulators ordered Facebook to stop gathering data through WhatsApp in September of 2016. UK regulators did the same in November of 2016. French regulators did that in 2017. And so now WhatsApp runs its European operations through an Irish subsidiary called WhatsApp Ireland Limited, which offers a different privacy policy to the rest of the world. And that privacy policy does prevent data sharing with Facebook. Now, there's a lot of background there and an awful lot of technical detail. I wouldn't blame anyone for being a little bit lost. So just to summarize, if you are outside Europe, WhatsApp is already sharing your data with Facebook and has been for several years. Unless you opted out in 2016 during a crucial 30-day window, in which case you might be okay.
Which I think I did.
But if you failed to opt out or signed up after that fact, then they are already sharing your data with Facebook to help Facebook sell more ads. And they can do this under the terms of their privacy policy. Their privacy policy states As part of the Facebook companies, capital F, capital C, WhatsApp receives information from and shares information with other Facebook companies. We may use the information we receive from them, and they may use the information we share with them to operate, provide, improve, understand, customize, support, and market our services and their offerings, including the Facebook company products. That's what the worldwide privacy policy says. For customers in the European region, as they term it, your account operates under a slightly different privacy policy. This privacy policy says, as part of the Facebook companies, WhatsApp receives information from and shares information with other Facebook companies to promote safety, security, and integrity across the Facebook company products, e.g. to fight spam, threats, abuse, and infringement activities. Which is a less expansive definition and doesn't obviously at least contain any references to advertising, even euphemistically under things like improve the Facebook company product, which just means make our ad platform better. That's literally what that means. But they don't reference that in the EU version of the privacy policy. So nothing to worry about. We're all good, right? It's a bit I'm all right, Jack. People outside of Europe are already having their data sent to Facebook, whether they like it or not. But we're okay here in the UK, so that's fine.
Right here in Europe.
We're still in Europe. We're not in the EU. We're still we're still on the continent of Europe.
Well, that's subject to change.
So now we have left the EU. We no longer have the bargaining muscle that we used to have. It was the UK regulator that initially said, no, Facebook, you can't do this. But we are probably only a concerted lobbying effort away from that being removed. And Facebook removing the UK from their definition of the European region and putting us onto the privacy policy that the rest of the world is under. We aren't there right now, but increasingly we are seeing US tech firms move their UK customers under their US arm instead of their EU arm because of that lighter touch regulation. Arguably, more important than that, is that Facebook unfortunately do have a reputation for, well, lying. They told the European Commission it was impossible to aggregate the WhatsApp data with the Facebook data in order to get the acquisition approved, and then went ahead and did it anyway. They asked their users to add their phone numbers for the purposes of securing their login. Say, if you give us your phone number, we'll text you to make sure no one else can access your Facebook account. They promised that they wouldn't use those numbers for anything else. And then aggregated that data with all of the rest of their data and started using it to send customers SMS notifications to increase engagement on the platform, which they later blamed on a bug. It was a bug. When they purchased the VR startup Oculus, they promised that they would never require customers to have a Facebook account to be able to use their VR headset. Until last year, when they made it so you required a Facebook account in order to be able to use your VR headset, to the point where effectively some customer devices were rendered useless because they'd been banned from Facebook. So they couldn't have a Facebook account, and the very expensive £1,000 worth of VR equipment that they bought was now literally useless. It was a paperweight. They have, in my opinion, a well-deserved reputation as one of the most morally bankrupt companies on the planet. When Facebook says, we offer a one-time opt-out in 2016, which means we don't share your data, do you believe them? When they say we will honour that opt-out even after we have removed all references to it from our privacy policy, which the latest privacy policy does, no reference is made to that opt-out anymore, do you believe they're going to continue to honour that opt-out? They say they will, but do you believe them? When they say we treat data from European users differently, do you believe them when they say that? This is the company that set up divisions to combat misinformation on their platform to appease regulators, only to close them down again as soon as the heat was off. This was a company that performed mass psychological experiments on their users without their consent by adding and removing content from their news feeds to see if it improved or damaged their customers' moods. And afterwards, they apologized for that and said, we never meant to upset anybody.
And the thing is, even with that particular experiment, it doesn't need to have had radical effects. It doesn't even need to have had any effect on you. The fact that they were engaging you in an experiment they didn't tell you about is bad enough, regardless of whether what they tried failed. So I've seen a lot of people would criticize that, saying, well, it's very conspiratorial thinking to think that this platform can have such a massive effect on your mood and can mind control you in that way. You know, it's a bit tinfoil hattish. It's like the issue isn't whether it works or not. The issue is that they did it without telling you. They subjected you to an experiment without letting you know that you were part of it.
It is the ethics of it. And websites do experiments all of the time. You know, we call it A/B testing. We're going to show half the customers this, half the customers that, and see who clicks more or engages more or likes more or deletes more or whatever. But an experiment where you're deliberately trying to influence the psychological state of your customers. Yeah,
the A/B testing is testing the product.
Indeed.
That test is testing the customer.
Yes. And that is a different situation. It's a nuanced difference, but there is a difference there. Last year, Facebook were fined $5 billion by the Federal Trade Commission for privacy violations. But when you operate on the scale of Facebook, would you pay $5 billion for an annual license to be able to use the data in the way that you use the data? Of course you would. Facebook's annual revenue is $70 billion. $5 billion is neither here nor there. I saw a note on Twitter recently. Somebody had posted that if something is punishable only by a fine, that is effectively the same thing as saying this is okay for rich people.
Yeah, it's not a fine at that point; it's a price.
Yeah. What is the difference between paying $5 billion for a license up front or paying $5 billion as a fine tomorrow when you get caught?
Yeah.
As best I can see, the difference there is cash flow. Yeah, it's the only difference there.
And if their annual income is 70 billion and this is 5 billion, that's not a small amount of their annual income, but it's an investment. When they spend that money, they know that they can increase their annual income or part of their annual income are based on having spent that money, which drives extra profit.
And that's why I'm deleting my WhatsApp anyway. Because even though I do have an opt-out in place, even though I am in the European region, I don't trust them not to do the wrong thing when it is the right thing for their bottom lines. So the question remains, why are Facebook updating their privacy policy? What prompted these notifications in the first place? And it turns out to be something actually quite mundane. It turns out it's because of their business service. Facebook offers a service to businesses where you are able to create a shared WhatsApp account with messages distributed between your customer service staff while still appearing to be from a single WhatsApp account to your customers. This usually involves the business setting up some special server software which can decode and distribute messages. Normally, WhatsApp messages are encrypted. They're end-to-end encrypted, so it's encrypted on your device, sent over the network, and then decrypted by the other device. But when you're needing to distribute this among several devices, so between 100 or so customer service staff, you need another device at the other end to act as the terminator to receive the master copy of the message and then distribute it amongst your customer service staff. And this is a service that Facebook offer. You can do this yourself using software that Facebook provide, or you can outsource it to a third party. And as of this year, that third party you can outsource it to includes Facebook itself. Which means that the previous wording of their privacy policy about how Facebook never gets near any of this stuff is no longer technically true. Because if you're communicating with a business that has outsourced its WhatsApp server software to Facebook, then technically Facebook do get access to a load of stuff that previously they told everyone they didn't have access to. But instead of communicating this clearly to their users, they sent out a general message which said, hey, we want to be able to share data with Facebook, and if you don't like that, you can fuck off. And that message put the wind up enough users, myself included, to cause the PR disaster that we've already seen.
So does that mean the privacy statement only refers to those business accounts for now?
Yes.
But it opens the door for them to apply it to regular WhatsApp users as well?
In the cases where it isn't already open, absolutely, because they already do aggregate data with Facebook. Because Facebook's damage limitation on this has been, no, wait, nothing is changing, to try and put people's minds at rest, which might even have worked, except for the fact that the reason nothing is changing is that they're already doing the thing that everyone is complaining about. They are already sharing data with Facebook, and they have been doing this for years.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. Whenever I'm working or doing household chores or pop into the shop or out for a run, it's pretty rare to see me without earphones in, listening to people talking about things. I listen to a lot of football podcasts, quite a lot of comedy shows, and a few skeptical podcasts as well. Less so than I used to, but partly because I spend so much of my time doing skeptical stuff that now podcasts are a sort of a place I go to listen to other things as well as to keep up with what's happening in what is now my day job, you know?
Bit of a busman's holiday, isn't it, at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I still listen to skeptical shows for research and for kind of background on things, but I kind of have an escape into other stuff, and that's largely sort of football and comedy and stuff.
I think I don't listen to any podcasts, any skeptical podcasts that isn't either produced by Merseyside Skeptics or presented by Thomas Smith. Those are the only skeptical podcasts that I listen to.
Fair. So podcasts are obviously a medium that I love, and one I've got quite a lot of experience in. I was thinking about this just the other day. Like, we've nearly done 300 episodes of this show. It's coming up to about 300-ish. But on top of that, I've done 66 episodes of Be Reasonable. The latest one came out just last week, in case you've not heard it yet. I interviewed a guy called Jez Lamb, who's a cranial osteopath who freely admits that he makes claims directly to his patients that are not legal and doesn't really see a problem with doing so. But on top of those 300-ish of this and 66 of Be Reasonable, I did around about 100 episodes of Righteous Indignation between 2009 and 2012. I did 2 series of a show called Strange Quarks, which I only stopped doing after my co-host brought it back for a 3rd series without actually telling me he was doing that. And the 3rd series just came out. I was like, well, I guess I'm not on that show anymore then. Fair enough. And that 3rd series was the last.
I remember that.
Plus, I did 22 episodes of the European Skeptics Congress podcast in 2015, which was a show that I did interviewing people who are going to be speaking at the European Skeptics Congress in London in that year. And I've been on, must be around 15 episodes of Incredulous, probably the same amount of episodes of God Awful Movies since I joined them as a recurring guest host. Then throw in a few guest interviews on the Skeptic Zone, Cognitive Dissonance, Scathing Atheist, the SGU, and the European Skeptics podcast. And I must be knocking on for like about 500 shows recorded by this point over the span of about 12 years.
You once played a really good game of 20 questions on Skeptics Guide as well. That was entertaining. That was good.
I mean, that itself was long enough to constitute several episodes of podcasts right there. In that time, in that kind of 12 years, podcasting's changed a hell of a lot, really. When we first started this show, it was something niche enough that you still had to explain to people what a podcast was. Whereas now having a podcast has passed through commonality into cliche, especially for white guys like me and Mike. Thank God we added Alice for some tokenistic diversity, or we'd be in an absolute rut right now. That explosion of popularity over the last decade or so has seen something of a gold rush, as people who would otherwise have sought an audience through more mainstream publications set up their own podcast instead, right the way up to people like, right now, Alec Baldwin and Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, who have their own podcasts. Then also mainstream publishers themselves arrived into podcast land and just declared it theirs. Like a 19th century general stepping off a boat in India, going, this is ours now. We're here. We're British. This is ours. We are the BBC, podcaster ours now. We are the Guardian, podcaster ours. You know, where once the iTunes podcasting charts were filled with independent shows by makers you'd never really heard of, particularly recording in bedrooms on cheap headsets, the charts are now filled with podcasts from the BBC and the Guardian, the New York Times and NPR and et cetera, all the sort of the established players.
And they all go, BBC Sounds.
Yeah, exactly. Or they all have like you've got some background music going on while someone talks slowly over the top in ways that are trying to get you to be curious, telling sounds on soundscapes, that kind of stuff. Though the thing is, with any gold rush, what you really need is some gold. That's a key criteria, it's a key element of any gold rush. And for a long time, the only gold that was there when it came to podcasts was simply ears, the ears of the listener, the number of people you could reach and how many stars you could persuade them to give you as a rating. And, you know, the more stars you got, nothing. They didn't come to anything.
It took a long while to get into that monetization phase.
It really did. I mean, for a long time, you know, maybe you could sell them a T-shirt or a mug. And, you know, eventually you could persuade them to support you on Patreon, patreon.com/Mersey Skeptics. By the way, if you have been enjoying this independently produced podcast for any portion of the last 12 years, head over there. For lots of shows out there, there's quite a lot of money to be mined from Patreon. And there's lots of people even promoting some really dodgy views who are coining it in on Patreon right now. And it was largely a platform that was set up to monetize podcasts and has become a place to monetize all manner of things. Famously, when it comes to dodgy views, Jordan Peterson was making $80,000 a month on Patreon at one point. And even now, James Lindsay is making decent money on Patreon while spouting literal conspiracy theory nonsense like, as he did this week, the rise in anti-Semitism is the fault of Jewish people for being too woke. So if there's much more anti-Semitism in the world, it's the fault of the Jews, according to James Lindsay. And how he even went as far as to say that the word woke shares the same etymological root as the German term Volk.
I saw that. That was That was amazing. I saw that.
And the thing is, he must know that isn't true. He's just willing to pretend he believes it because it keeps the Patreon money flowing in, essentially. You know, for the avoidance of doubt, the word woke is the past participle of awake and has absolutely no relationship to the German word for people that Hitler used during his reign. Specifically, that's where the word woke is often kind of associated. And for the further avoidance of doubt, James Lindsay's Conspiracy Theory Business New Discourses currently has around 2,000 supporters on Patreon, which I'm sure is a pretty solid top-up to the money he received from his Christian nationalist business partners, Sovereign Nations. So, you know, fuck that guy. Still, Patreon isn't the only source of funding for podcasts, or at least not the only source of funding for podcasts other than ours, because running ads on podcasts has become commonplace on podcasts that aren't ours. These podcast ads come in several different formats, which I'm sure you're all aware of. You get the pre and the post ad, where a clip of audio is inserted at the beginning or the end of the stream that you can listen to or skip right at the end. And then there's the mid-show ad, where your podcast host stops for a moment and there's a little audio clip will play, sometimes preceded by a little sound effect. And then there's the copy read ad, where your favorite and most trusted podcast host stops talking about the thing you like them talking about and instead starts talking about products and services instead. And I'm no prude here, and as Mike has already covered, you know, advertising is a necessary evil. I'm somebody who spends a lot of time looking at and reading about and talking about how the media works, how newspapers work, how other kind of media outlets work, how they're financed. You know, I understand that ads are often a very necessary evil, and keeping the lights on is a very reasonable thing for podcasts to do as well. Nothing against that at all. You know, I also understand that some people even make their living doing podcasts, and advertising is probably a decent chunk of that. So it's not just a hobby like it is for us. For some people, it's literally what they do all day, and the money that keeps them coming in keeps the show on the road. I totally get it. Personally, I find ads in podcasts annoying, but I also find ads on TV annoying. And I find them annoying when they're in newspapers. But in all of those cases, I'm willing to accept it as a necessary trade-off for getting the thing that I'm interested in.
I tell you what's wound me up a lot recently is the new Russell T Davies drama has just been made available. It's a Sin, which was originally called The Boys, but then this Amazon show came out, and he's like, shit. So he had to change the name of it to It's a Sin. But
It's a Sin's a better name.
I agree, it is. Although everyone thinks it was just, you know, so he could give royalties to the Pet Shop Boys, because why would you think, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give royalties to the Pet Shop Boys. That'll be a laugh. I don't know why you would do that, but no, it was, you had to change the name because of Amazon. But that's screening on Channel 4 at the moment, but all 5 episodes went up on all 4 on the first day. And when you watch a program on all 4, you have to sit through 2 to 4 minutes of unskippable ads at the start and again in the middle before you can oh Christ, it's taken me so long to get, because I get bored through the ads. I go, fuck it.
Yeah,
gotta go read Twitter.
It's often the same ads as well. It's often the same ads in the same order.
Yeah.
Oh
God, it's interminable. I mean, at least YouTube ads I can skip after 5 seconds, but there's 2 minutes, 4 minutes of unskippable ads. What are you thinking this through? Seriously?
We recently, well, I say recently, start of lockdown, so a year ago, we went and watched all of Seinfeld, which was up on More 4. And obviously there's many, many episodes of that. And it was the same ads at the start and in the middle of all those episodes, basically. And so there was just some ads that would just become part of Seinfeld in our head. But there's certain advertising jingles that are now part of Seinfeld canon, essentially, in what we're doing. But ads that are explicitly ads, I'm willing to accept them as a trade-off for getting access to all that tasty content that I'm actually after. Where things get trickier and ethically dicier, in my opinion, is where, for example, you're reading a newspaper and the article you just spent time reading was actually placed there by a commercial company rather than written and edited by journalists. And I've talked about that a lot in the past. You know, it's native advertising or, worse, bad PR. It undermines the trust you have in your newspaper and your editors and your journalists, because you can no longer be sure that what appeared there, it appeared there because it was a genuine story, or whether it appeared there because someone paid the newspaper to pretend it's a real story. And in my opinion, copy-read ads on podcasts are the native advertising in the podcasting world. And I think they get way too little scrutiny. And this particularly crossed my mind recently when I was listening to Pod Save America. You know, I don't know if you guys listen to it. It's a podcast which sees several former staffers in the Obama administration talk through the latest political news from around the US. And under Trump, there was obviously a lot to talk about quite regularly. And so I've been a pretty regular listener for years now. And if you can hold your nose a little through some of their pretty smug in-jokes, which are really, really cringeworthy. There's quite a lot of valid political commentary in there. You know, they're very self-satisfied, but beyond that, they actually know what they're talking about. So fine, I'm willing to do that.
What sort of podcast will be full of smug in-jokes? Fucking hell.
But they'd be talking through this valid political commentary, and then there'd be a little sound effect, and then they'd all start talking about the underwear brand that they're wearing, or where they got their mattress from. And I'd find it incredibly jarring, because these people who were just talking very authoritatively and informedly about how the American political system works and where it's breaking down, are now slipping straight into infomercial mode, reading ad copy about how wonderful a product wants them to say it is. And it's really jarring. And maybe they really believe it. Maybe they really do eat HelloFresh every single night and sleep soundly on a Casper mattress. And maybe they really do hate going to the post office, and so finding stamps.com with its free digital scale really is a godsend for them. I've honestly no idea whether they really believe it or not, because I know for a fact they're paid to say so either way.
We've said before, I'd be quite interested to know how the advertising model works and whether MeUndies does send every single podcast that advertises them a free pair of MeUndies so that they can honestly say that they do wear them or have worn them or have tried them. I can't believe for a second that they do that. The number of podcasts that advertise Casper mattresses, they can't possibly have sent every single podcast a mattress.
And we have been approached about this. With those podcast advertising platforms have been in touch with us here at SWAC to say, hey, we'd like to put advertising on your podcast. It's just not something that I'm particularly interested in doing.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm not against advertising being on podcasts. This isn't here to, I'm not here to be on a high horse and say, if your podcast takes adverts, there's something wrong with you. That's not what this is at all. But that transition from trusted expert into door-to-door salesperson is really jarring, and it caches little credibility as they do it, for example, on Podsiv America. And that's just when they're promoting things that are uncontroversial, like mattresses. But unfortunately, they don't stop there. So Magic Spoon cereal is high protein, low sugar, keto-friendly, gluten-free, and GMO-free, they told me recently, before talking at length about how this great cereal is amazing and how it comes in so many flavors. And in doing so, they joined the ranks of influencers who rave about Magic Spoon for money, including testimonials on the Magic Spoon website from Kelly LeVesque, the holistic nutritionist and wellness expert, or John Durant, the author of the Paleo Manifesto, or Katie Wells, the founder of wellnessmama.com, or Positive America, the former staffers of the Obama administration. That's the territory they're putting themselves in.
So raving about the cereal just makes me think of like kind of box of Frosties in the middle of the room. They're all there with glow sticks.
Yeah.
Listening to electro.
Dancing around it like women in the 80s would do around their handbag. It's just that with a box of Frosties in the middle instead, or a bowl of Frosties. Yeah. And the thing is, as they peddle this cereal, there's no question at all about whether it actually is a good thing that the cereal's GMO-free, or whether it's really important for people to eat gluten-free. And it isn't even that they just plow through the ad read, because to get the best income from the ads, the hosts need to add their own positive experience of the product. So I'm not sure them saying anti-GMO is an anti-science position and you don't need to be gluten-free unless you have celiac disease is the kind of addition the advertisers are looking for, or at least if it is, that's never an opinion anybody has offered during the ad read. And I can imagine it's the kind of thing an advertiser would be pissed off if he'd said.
They're not going to book a second slot, are they? After that, are they?
Exactly.
Probably not.
They, on the same podcast, they literally in the same episode, they'd read ads for the Noom dietary program, which claims to use psychology-based evaluation to determine the right diet for you. And it's a weight tracking app that costs you $25 a month. The hosts say they love it. They say they also love their 4-Sigmatic mushroom coffee, the organic drink that supports your immune system. And they love to tell you about Athletic Greens, your daily dose of nutritional insurance, which are paleo and keto-friendly supplements designed to support immunity, energy, digestion, and recovery. Because the thing is, Athletic Greens, as they say, these are supplements that are apparently filled with superfood complex, including adaptogens and antioxidants, plus 75 vitamins and minerals. Do you need them, and do they actually help you? Well, your favorite podcast hosts are willing to say yes to those questions for money. So that should put your mind at rest enough to spend £90 on a 30-day supply. Or you could just use the discount code for 10% off your first purchase. That's the discount code for 10% off your first purchase. Or there was their ad for Beekeepers Naturals, which the host reads verbatim, Beekeepers Naturals is on a mission to reinvent your medicine cabinet with clean remedies that actually work, that naturally support immune health with antioxidants. It's your daily dose of defense when it comes to naturally supporting your immune system. Clean remedies, antioxidants, naturally supporting your immune system. These are the terms of Goop. These are the terms of what doctors don't tell you. These are the terms of snake oil salesmen selling you supplements. Hucksters.
I particularly like clean remedies because it sounds so innocuous on the surface, but the implication of it is that other medicines are dirty.
Yeah, because they're reinventing your medicine cabinet. You know, it gets worse. In the same ad, the host went on to explain that Beekeepers Naturals also sell Bee Elixir Brain Fuel, which is a, quote, productivity shot that supports clear thinking with science-backed adaptogens. Beekeepers are a supplement company who sell products like the $75 vegan pharmacy kit. That's vegan with a B.
Vegan.
Because it's, I don't know if it's vegan honey, I'm not sure. Maybe
vegan.
It can't be vegan honey.
It can't be vegan honey if it's from bees.
They've called it that to associate itself with veganism, even though it can't be vegan because it's honey. Anyway, it includes some superfood honey, a throat spray, and their Brain Force Plus. Sorry, their Bee Elixir Brain Fuel. And they market this with the claim that it will fight jet lag, defend your immune system, and get you energized. Beekeepers sell an immune rescue kit for $80 and a family immune support essentials pack for $83, the latter of which includes 4 throat sprays and a bottle of cough syrup for $83. The spray contains bee propolis, a kind of waxy resin created by bees.
No one wants that in their throat. Why do you want resin in your throat?
Tell you what, if I've got a cough, bit of bee resin, that's what settles me right down. Stops me breathing as well, but settles me right down.
There's no good evidence for this, as best as I can tell. No good evidence that it has any health benefits. There's certainly no evidence that it fights jet lag or supports clear thinking, whatever this means.
I mean, bees fly and
they don't get jet lag.
No, I've never seen a bee up early because it's just done an overnight one. And that's...
But the thing is, this is bullshit. This is mountains of bullshit. This is entire goops of bullshit. And it's promoted you by the people you listen to regularly and trust. And I think this is a major ethical issue. And when it's all about hawking products that we'd criticize Gwyneth Paltrow or Alex Jones or Joe Rogan for peddling, it's really obvious. But I think this ethical issue runs deeper than that. When I used to listen to the Skeptics Guide to the Universe, they'd read out ads about a company that allowed you to track your investments easily. And they'd have like a 5 or 6 minute discussion about it. Now, do they use that company themselves to track their investments? If so, is their opinion of it coloured by the fact they're being paid to say it? I'm sure it is. If they don't use it, it's really not great that they'll talk about it like they do. If they really don't have a Casper mattress, or if they do, but they didn't find it as life-changingly amazing as they said on the show, I think there's ethical issues there.
Yeah, if a podcast host is going to spend minutes telling you that they specifically use this product and they love this product and they've never used it or tried it, that's a major problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when the whole raison d'etre of your podcast is about combating misinformation.
That's exactly it. Because the thing is, I don't know whether the SGU still run ads or if they still run ads like that, but I think it's something I should really think about. Because when you've got a massive public reach, specifically for thinking critically and appraising evidence, it's a worry if you do sell some of that reach and some of the trust to promote products you've not actually used or with more positive opinions than you'd actually have if you weren't being paid for them. I think that's a real issue. And the thing is, full disclosure here, because I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, I'm a regular on a podcast that runs copy read ads. And as a freelance contributor to their business, I get paid to read them to be on the show and to read them. But the thing is, I think the way the ads work on god-awful movies and The Scathing Atheist, for example, I think that's something I feel comfortable with for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I know for a fact that they vet their ads and make sure they aren't promoting bullshit. And I know that because Eli quite often contacts me about a potential advertiser, asking if the science stacks up or not. At which point I contact Alice, asking if the science stacks up or not. If it doesn't work, they don't take the ad. And I think that's very reasonable. But secondly, the copy reading of their ads are always 100% of the time recorded as sketches and skits and act outs. Partly that's because it's more interesting to listen to a comedy bit than it is to sit through someone telling you straight an opinion that they've been paid to pretend to have. But I also think it helps enforce the barrier between editorial and commercial a lot more. Because ads are read by characters on their show. They're read by characters that the people on their show play and not the real people themselves. It becomes completely clear that everything being said during the ads is part of a script because we all recognize and inherently understand that sketches are scripted in a way that people might not understand that those ad reads on Pod Save America are scripted as well.
And I think, I'm sure there will be podcast hosts who, in their mind, that is clear, that they will differentiate. Now we're going to an ad break, and they think that's sufficient to explain that what they're saying is something they've been paid to say. But it's not always clear, and it's certainly not clear to everybody. And having a stronger distinction there is important.
Yeah. And the thing is, it might be clear, but it still muddies the water. So people might go, well, I know this is an ad read now, but it still muddies the water. And we know it muddies the water because advertisers wouldn't pay you to do it if it didn't. What they're looking to do is they just give you some audio to stick in. The reason they want your voice doing it is because it muddies the water. It takes your credibility, takes the trust that people have placed on you.
Can you imagine if in an episode of Coronation Street and 15 minutes in, instead of them stopping to play an advert for fucking the DFI sale, all the characters just suddenly turned to camera and said, yeah, and we're all going to go to the DFI sale. Isn't everyone going to be excited about that?
Not even that. For Coronation Street, the news.
Indeed.
ITN News, where what they're doing is telling you the truth, telling you straight down the line the truth. They're not pretending to be anyone like on Coronation Street. They're telling you the truth, and then they stop telling you the truth to start reading ad copy directly to you. You know, Jon Snow starts telling you about his favourite mattress. It's going to have a different impact to cutting to an advert for SES.
Although I would like to know about Jon Snow's favourite mattress. He's quite tall as well. I'm not sure he'd fit on a Casper mattress.
I can tell you about my favourite mattress, but I don't think you can actually buy it.
Okay, so this is the opposite of an advert.
I think it specifically isn't purchasable.
Okay.
I've genuinely Googled to see if I can find this mattress and
Alice,
see if I can purchase this mattress. And
what is your favourite mattress?
So I once stayed in a Jury's Inn. So Jury's Inn have a relationship with one of the big mattress companies that I forget which now. But at the time, I think it was 8 of their hotels had these super special mattresses.
Right.
And you could look on their website and find out which hotel had the mattresses. And I stayed in one of the hotels with these mattresses, and it genuinely is the best mattress I've ever slept in. It's incredible. But you literally cannot buy them. They are supplied to Jury's Inn hotels only. And there was like one competition several years ago where you could win one of these mattresses, but that's the only information I can find. I cannot sell you this mattress.
Totally clear. Alice is not being paid by Jury's Inn to say that. This isn't just a way of saying, so you should go out and book yourself time at a
Jury's Inns.
Skeptics with K, sponsored by Jury's Inn.
I genuinely have dreams about that mattress. It was such a great mattress.
TM.
So I feel comfortable being on a show that does ad reads and doing ad reads on the show because the guys doing the show do it really honestly, and they're really good at making the line clear between Marsh that's giving his opinion and Marsh that's playing a character in a sketch they've written. That plus they're not going to peddle any Brain Force plus B-Alexa anytime soon. That gives me confidence that my integrity and my credibility isn't being given to the products that are being advertised. And I think other podcasters need to find ways to do this better. Whether that's through a stricter vetting process on what they advertise and who they advertise or what they say, or maybe it's through making it really clear what they've been paid to say, making it really explicit to the listener that I've been paid to tell you this. Right now, podcast advertising is still new. It's only been around for 5-10 years at most. And it's often being pitched to people who aren't used to being on the receiving end of advertising offers. You start a show, you're doing it with your friends, it's just an amateur thing, and then you start getting advertising offers, and you might not be used to receiving offers from advertisers. So you might feel like you just have to do anything they say for the money that they give you. But if podcasters who cared about their integrity set clearer lines, they have the opportunity to shape the rules and norms of podcast advertising. Without those clear lines, the advertisers will take as much as they can because that's what advertising does. The value for them is in your reputation, your voice, and the trust your listeners have in you. If you don't take that seriously and work hard to protect it and preserve it, nobody else will. And when it's gone, it's gone. And the advertisers at that point won't even want you anymore.
So, Skeptics in the Pub online. We have an event this evening, which is taking place on our Twitch channel. March, do you want to give us an update on that?
Yeah, that is going to be a talk about the dangerous products that are in our homes and in our stomachs. So the the things that are in the food that we have and how dangerous actually are they, that kind of stuff. That's actually a joint talk between David Frank and Virginia Ing, and that is at 7 p.m. at our Twitch channel. So if you go to twitch.tv/SITP and you can see it there. And then the week after that, at exactly the same address at 7 p.m. on February the 11th, is a talk by Dr. Jacques Launay, who talks about the evolutionary origins of music making.
Ooh, sounds interesting. And of course, we've got the Skeptic magazine, which continues to be publishing articles on a regular basis and attracting an audience and pissing off the right people.
Yes. Yeah, no, we've had some really cool stuff on there. We've had Mark Horn from Merseyside Skeptics, who wrote about Nestor Webster, who's a far-right author who popularized the anti-Semitic elements of the Illuminati conspiracy. Jonathan Jarry did a guest article for us talking about some of the things that skeptics say that we shouldn't be saying anymore. Alice, the piece that you did last time on the Skeptics with a K about community testing and lateral flow versus PCR, you wrote that up for the skeptics, so anybody can direct their friends and family members to that if they ever have any questions about how the testing works. We had a really interesting piece from Galina Limarenko about how to design patient outreach in a way that can help tackle misinformation where it does the most harm with the actual patients themselves. So there's all sorts of interesting stuff up on The Skeptic.
And we've spent a lot of time this episode talking about advertising and advertisers and how advertisers like to exploit you in various different ways, shapes and forms. One of the ways you can stop that is by funding the things that you care about directly, such as by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/Mersey Skeptics. That's really beneficial thing. It helps out Merseyside Skeptics. It means that we can get to keep doing this show for free without us having to drop into an ad, character driven or otherwise, in order to sell you things that we don't actually believe in, because we don't want to be in that position. So that's patreon.com/Mersey Skeptics. Aside from that, then, that is all we have time for.
Yep.
All that remains is for me to thank Marsh for coming along today.
Thank you.
And thank you to Alice.
Thank you.
We have been Skeptics with a K, and we will see you next time.
Bye now.
Bye.
Skeptics with a K is a production of the Merseyside Skeptics Society. For more information, visit our website, www.merseysideskeptics.org.uk, or email podcast@merseysideskeptics.org.uk.